Meet the biggest loser in school, Earth and beyond, Junichi Jun Hashiba. He is desperate to have a girlfriend that he finds himself on his knees, accidentally confessing his love to the most popular girl in school, Yukana Yame. And it works. Follow the unexpected journey of Junichi and Yukana's romance in this recap. It's a new semester, and everyone is getting booed up to go have fun during the weekend. But that's not the case for Junichi. Instead of enjoying a date on the weekend with a hot babe on his arm like everyone else, he's stuck in his friend group, which, needless to say, consists of other dudes who were unlucky with the girls as well. Let's call them the quartet of Rizless Gents. Yeah, that has a nice ring to it. While the quartet of Rizless Gents were lamenting about other guys getting some action right in class and brooding over their awful fate, Junichi heard his name call him. A girl named Nani, who had the biggest pair of melons I've ever seen. She came to bring Junichi his lunch because he forgot it on his way out. When she left, the Rizless Gents gathered around Junichi and demanded he introduced her to them. Junichi told them she was just a kid, but that only made them more eager. Someone. Get the cops on the phone. The Rizless Gents continued to educate Junichi about how wonderful and perfect Nini was. Junichi seriously questioned his taste in friends and was dumbfounded by their antics. While Junichi was regretting his friend's choices, a girl named Yui walked up to him, excited to be in the same class. After a brief chat, she returned to her friends. Without skipping a beat, the Rizless Gents began to analyze Yui. Shinpei gave her a good rating, though he was disappointed she forgot her milk jugs, a valid reason. As if their reputation wasn't bad enough, these Rizless idiots brought out ecchi magazines and started reading them right in class. Apparently, Shinpei did it to ruin the lovey-dovey mood in the class, and it surprisingly worked. Everyone got uncomfortable seeing them read the magazines, which is crazy because a minute ago, each of them was halfway down the other person's throat. But now a simple magazine is making you uncomfortable? Crazy stuff. Junichi was feeling embarrassed being with them, but it didn't take long for him to crack one open too. Just as he did, a girl yelled at him, and it made him drop the magazine. He looked up to see Yama Yukana, one of the top girls in the class. She was disgusted by the sight of them reading the magazines, and she just walked by. The gents convened outside after school to fantasize about Yukana, while Junichi was depressed about his loss of aura in front of Yukana. Not like he had much to begin with anyway. The gents got to talking, and after one bad decision or another, they decided to hook Junichi up with Yukana. How did they ever think that would be a good idea? They restrained Junichi and planted a love letter in Yukana's locker, asking to meet after school. Now you'd think when she sees this, she would rip it to shreds, right? Well, things get interesting from here. As soon as she read the letter, she canceled plans with her friend and went to meet Junichi behind school. Junichi was surprised she came because now he had no idea what to do. So he threw his aura to the wind and fell on his knees to beg Yukana to be his girlfriend. Yukana immediately got grossed out by this, but she was actually civil about it, and she told him to get up so they could go talk somewhere else. But Junichi noticed he was in the right angle to see her panties. Yeah, there's nothing on the planet that would make him move from there. After going back and forth about him standing up and why he decided to ask her out, she finally told him that she knew he was looking at her panties. But here comes the crazy part. She didn't complain. In fact, she teased him a little and bent down to give him a better view. At this point, Junichi's heart couldn't handle all this teasing, so he opted to just walk away and accept the rest of his boring high school life. But Yukana pulled him back and told him that she liked him. I can't believe it. He actually got her. Junichi was up all night wondering if Yukana was serious about what she said. His inner thoughts were excited about the possibility of getting closer to her. The next day, he met the Rizless Gents on his way to school. They apologized for pushing him into meeting Yukana and assured him they'd always be his friends, no matter what rumors spread. At least they seemed like ride or die friends, until Junichi received a flirty good morning selfie from Yukana. Suddenly, the gents acted like they didn't know him. What a crazy switch up. Junichi was so lost, but Shunpei grabbed him by the shoulder and started giving him some top-tier advice on what his next move should be, kissing Yukana. Shunpei told Junichi that inviting her to karaoke was the best choice since he could book a room and have privacy with her. That's actually solid advice, if only it wasn't fueled by pervy thoughts. When Junichi got to school, he was so flustered about what to do. He was greeted by Yu, but he was too nervous to hold a conversation with her. Suddenly, Yukana walked in and grabbed Junichi's arm to her fluffy chest. She smiled and greeted him. He asked if he saw her selfie earlier. While she was bragging about how cute she looked without filters, Yu asked if they were always that close, and Yukana didn't hesitate to tell everyone that she and Junichi were dating. I have a feeling something bad would happen soon. Things are going way too smoothly. But let's see how it goes. Junichi sat in his seat pondering how to ask Yukana to karaoke since people had been swarming her all day and he hadn't been able to get a word in with her. Just then, the gents saw themselves out of the class in an orderly fashion. Since Junichi had a girlfriend now, there was no need for them to go home after school together. Junichi was bummed out after hearing that, but not long after, Yukana came along and asked him to spend time with her after school. And guess where they went to? That's right, a karaoke bar. How is this guy so lucky? Either Junichi is a Riz god, or Yukana is just a freak. Regardless of which it is, I wish I was in his shoes. When they got there, Yukana got pretty comfortable and started singing and enjoying herself. Meanwhile, Junichi was considering all the possibilities of them getting down and jiggy right there in the room. But Junichi quickly realized that she was just there to sing some songs and have fun. Now he started panicking because he wanted to sing too, but all the songs he knew were from anime. But to his surprise, Yukana knew a bunch of anime songs too. So she urged him to pick any song he wanted and sing to his heart's content. They ended up picking a popular anime song that was sort of old, and they sang and had fun. Junichi was enjoying himself and even starting to loosen up too. But then, he noticed that all that had happened that night so far was following the pattern that Shinpei had predicted earlier. This made his brain go into overdrive with thinking about how to proceed, now that everything had seemingly aligned perfectly. His inner handsome self was even egging the other inner voices to go ahead and make a move on Yukana. So, he mustered up the courage to do it and even pinned her against the couch. Someone's in a hurry. As he leaned in for the kiss, Yukana pointed out that he had a nose hair sticking out. Yikes, all of that aura just reduced to zero. Junichi was so depressed after witnessing the downfall of his manhood, all thanks to a stupid nose hair. But hope was not lost, because Yukana said she had fun and wanted to come again with him. Junichi was happy beyond measure, and got up smiling from ear to ear. Meanwhile, the friend that Yukana canceled on the other day was spying on her from a corner. I wonder why. After school one day, as Junichi was getting his things from his locker to head home, he saw a love letter in there. He was so shocked that he didn't notice the Rizless gents sneak up on him and read the letter too. Shunpei, being the overly perverted nincompoop he is, started yelling at Junichiro saying he hated him. Junichiro told him he wasn't going to go anyway, but this made the gents even more upset. They told him that it would be very rude if he didn't go, when really, they were just egging him on, so that if he gets enough girls, he could share their friends with them too. Guys, never accept other girls' advances if you have a girlfriend. That's just disrespectful to your girl and to yourself. Have some dignity, man. Anyway, Junichiro decided to answer the letter and meet the person behind the school. What a dummy. He got there, and little did he know he was in for the shock of his life. The girl he met there was immediately throwing herself at him. She could literally smell the virgin air around him as soon as she saw him. Junichi couldn't think straight. The girl was rubbing her milkers all over him and eventually got him to the floor. She whispered in his ear and asked if he wanted to have a quickie on the spot. Junichi was once again too confused to think or properly say anything, but as he was getting close to finally getting rid of his virginity, Yukana comes along and catches the two of them. Junichi practically thought this was the end of his relationship, but to his surprise, Yukana knew the girl. Apparently her name was Ranko, and she had been friends with Yukana since they were in elementary school. Yukana didn't even get upset that her childhood best friend was literally about to get jiggy with her boyfriend. She probably is used to Ranko being like that. Or maybe she's just as freaky. This keeps getting interesting. After Yukana helped Ranko up, Ranko immediately grabbed Yukana's milkers and started to fondle them in front of Junichi. Junichi was witnessing the greatest show of his life as he stood there watching. But after a while, Ranko said something to upset Yukana, and that made her finally push Ranko off and head home with Junichi. Later that night, Junichi got a message from Yukana saying they should go out the next day with Ranko as well. And so, they did. They went to different stores and got a bunch of stuff. They even let Junichi pick out some of their clothes, although he was mostly thinking of how he would rip them off their bodies. Can't say I blame him. I was doing the same too. After their outing, two tough guys tried to hit on the girls. Junichi stepped in to defend them, but was quickly knocked down. Ranko, however, led the guys away and gave them a serious beating. Later, on his way home, Junichi was brooding over how weak he was and how he couldn't protect Yukana when the tough guys came around. But just then, he saw Ranko waiting at the front of his house. She pulled him in quickly and started seducing him. She told him that she liked him and wanted to get jiggy with him right now. Junichi was reluctant, but after a while, he started to wonder if he could really just do it right now. But he remembered Yukana, and he realized he couldn't betray her like that. So he pushed Ranko off and told her he was only going to do it with the girl he liked, which was Yukana. But Ranko got furious and pushed him back down. She told him she was going to ride him so good that he would never want another girl again. That sounds like a threat. but I honestly wish I was under her instead. Apparently, she loved Yukana and didn't want her to be with any other guy. As Renko was about to start riding, Yukana entered and was furious, but it was because she thought Junichi was cheating. Renko quickly lied that she was just testing Junichi to see if he was a good guy, and covered up what was really happening. But as soon as Yukana thanked her for being a good friend, she burst into tears. The next day, Renko cornered Junichi and told him not to tell Yukana about her true feelings. So, get this. Yui is so delusional that she believes the entire world exists for her sake. In fact, she sees her classmates as her servants and maids and just friend A or friend B. I know y'all say Delulu is the Solulu, but come on, there's only so much delusion one person should be allowed to have. But it gets crazier because you see, even as she looks down on everyone as peasants, the one person she didn't see as beneath her and she actually liked was, you guessed it, Junichi. But of course, Junichi didn't have the slightest clue about it. He just came into school every day as usual and hung out with his friends. Today especially, one of the gents, Keigo, was showing the rest of them a cute girl he saw this morning, and they were all losing their minds at how cute she was. Once all that madness was done, Junichi headed outside to have lunch with Yukana. He was so nervous that he could barely eat his food. But for some reason, he wasn't too nervous to think about romantic scenarios that could potentially happen, like Yukana feeding him a fruit with her mouth. But he quickly snapped out of his thoughts because he remembered that Renko was there, and she would definitely not let any of that happen. All of a sudden, Yui came around where they were and asked to see Junichi in private. Renko got pissed for some reason and told Yui to go somewhere else. Junichi apologized, but Yui still left with a smile on her face. Renko could already tell that Yui was hiding a very bad personality underneath her fake smiles. After school was done, Yukana left Junichi to go hang out with her friends. Junichi was pretty bummed out about it, but the feeling was replaced quickly by shock when Yui surprised him from behind. She came back to meet him since they didn't get a chance during lunch. She asked Junichi if he could help her out with some errands, and he quickly agreed. What a simp. When they got out of school, Yui stopped at a cafe to get something to eat with Junichi. Suddenly, Junichi started to think up some crazy scenarios, as he always does. He thought about Yui being all over him in the cafe since no one was around to stop them, but he was brought back to reality eventually. Personally, there's no way I'd be agreeing to stuff like that, especially if the girl isn't even as cute as my girlfriend. Like, bro, Junichi, what are you doing, man? The next morning at school, when Junichi came in before he could even say hi to Yukana, Yui was all over him. She was thanking him for yesterday like he did some great service to her or something, all while giving Yukana side-eye. Yeah, this girl has some evil intentions. But that wasn't even the craziest thing. Remember that cute girl Keigo was talking about? Well, Shunpei finds out that it was actually Yui. Apparently she does live videos every other day and cosplay so that no one would know her real identity. Shunpei even played an audio for the guys of when she was talking about them on stream. Renko had overheard everything they said and found it very interesting. Meanwhile, in class, everyone was getting ready to leave. Junichi wanted to walk home with Yukana, but Yui grabbed him back and asked him to follow her to somewhere private, and he agreed, with Yukana looking at him. What is wrong with this dude? Is he allergic to scents? When they got to the roof, Yui didn't waste any time, and she started to confess her feelings to Junichi. She asked him to break up with Yukana and be her boyfriend, but thank God Junichi had some sense left in him and he turned her down. But Yui didn't take that so well. She threw a fit and started saying some wild stuff about how Junichi was supposed to be her dog and do as she commands. Wow, her delusion is strong. She even blackmailed Junichi with a recording of them on the date. But Renko and the gents came along and rescued Junichi by blackmailing Yui with her own secret. She got pissed and walked off, and so Junichi walked back home with Yukana as he was in awe of her beauty. Junichi was fast asleep dreaming of his cute and sexy girlfriend. In his dream, he reached out to grab Yukana's milkers, but when he woke up, he found himself actually grabbing some heavy milkers. He was going through so many mixed emotions. I mean, waking up to that scenario is any guy's dream, me included, but not if the girl is a potential stranger in your house. The girl got off him and started talking to herself, but Junichi was still confused. She eventually revealed herself to be Nene, his childhood friend. Now, it makes sense why she had such massive milkers. After he got ready, Nene escorted him to school while linking arms with him. Junichi was loving the feeling of milkers on his arm, but he was worried about what Yukina would say if she saw them. Just then, someone called out his name and his heart flew out of his chest, but it was only the gents. Minoru saw Nene and immediately started looking at her like she was food to be eaten. Nene turned around and introduced herself, but as soon as she said she was only a year younger than Junichi, he suddenly found her disgusting, and his interest dropped to 0. Yeah, someone call the cops on this dude, please. After all that mess was over, they headed to school and Yui met up with Junichi. She apologized for what happened on the roof the other day, and like the simp he is, he quickly forgave her. But really, she just wanted to reset and try again another time. Yui noticed that Junichi smelled like another girl, and as she was wondering who it was, Nene showed up to ask Junichi to walk with her home. Junichi refused because he had plans with Yukana already, and this made Nene very upset. But Nene quickly turned her attention to Yui and noticed that she was getting angry. Nene realized it was because she cut in as she was talking to Junichi. I wonder why it's only the girls that are noticing Yui's true nature. Yui eventually left for class, but she stepped on Junichi on her way. He didn't even do nothing. Junichi was so stressed. He had had such a crazy morning already. Yukana walked up to him and she noticed too. So she suggested they go somewhere fun on the weekend to cheer him up. Now that's what I call a W girlfriend. Junichi doesn't deserve her honestly. While he was being cheered up, the gents were contemplating their sad, babeless lives. Later during lunch, Junichi was outside with Yukana enjoying his lunch. She was flirting and being all lovey with him, but Ranko was glaring at him to make sure he didn't try to flirt back. Girls really are their own worst enemies. While this was going on, Nene ran to meet Junichi and gave him some cookies. She tried force-feeding him, but it got on his face, so she licked it off. This pissed Yukana off because she hadn't even kissed Junichi on the cheek yet, and some other girl was licking it in front of her. If I were her, I'd be in jail for attempted murder against Nene. But Yukana quickly calmed down when she realized that Nene was just like a little sister to Junichi. Nene didn't want to be looked down on, so she decided to compare chest size with Yukana, and hers was actually bigger. Sad. I'd give anything to see how they looked. Junichi must have felt the same too, because their boob fighting made him ascend to Cloud 9. Nene got embarrassed and ran off, but later that night, when Junichi was about to sleep, he saw Nene in his bed fully naked and ready to get jiggy with him. It took all his willpower to refuse her. But once he did, she ended up going back home. The next day, however, Nene came up to him and told him that she decided to become even cooler than Yukana, so that he would date her instead. Junichi came to school that morning, and the gents quickly surrounded him. They told him about a new game that could help him make some progress with Yukana in the kiss department, but they agreed to help him on the condition that he gets Yukana to have a get-together at her house with the rest of her friends. Junichi happily agreed. Later, during break time, Junichi was eating his lunch with Yukana, but he zoned out thinking of a way to ask for permission to hang out with his guys after school. Yukana snapped him out of it, and he finally decided to ask her. She hesitated a bit, but she agreed. Then Junichi told her that he was inviting his friends too, and her mood just changed. This guy is really dense. Couldn't he have put off the get-together for another day? After school, Junichi stood at the gate waiting for Yukana. While he was waiting, he was dreaming about what could potentially happen while he was alone with Yukana before the others came. But he got snapped out of his daydream by Yui. She asked him why he was waiting, and he told her about the get-together. Suddenly, Yui started telling Junichi that she was also free for the day. She kept drilling him until he finally got the hint and invited her as well. Crazy how he could get the hint from that, but he's so clueless when it comes to his own girlfriend. After Yui left, Yukana came and they headed to her house. After Yukana got changed, she invited Junichi into her room. He was in awe of everything there, but as soon as he locked onto her cleavage, his eyes didn't go anywhere else again. Yeah, I'd have done the same. Suddenly, Yukana got close to Junichi and asked if he liked her milkers. Junichi was too stunned to respond, but it didn't matter. He was already reaching to grab it, and it looked like Yukana was gonna let him. But Ranko rained on his parade once again and interrupted him. She had come with Yui and Nene too. Yukana stood up and said she was just teasing Junichi, but Nene saw this as her chance and pulled Junichi's arm to her humongous milkers, saying that he could touch hers any time. Oh Lord, bless me with such a privilege too. But out of nowhere, like the RKO, Yui hit his face with her knee. When did Yui become a WWE superstar? What kind of bittersweet get-together is this? For Junichi's sake, I hope things get better. After a while, the Rizless gents finally arrived while wearing some ridiculous outfits. Shunpei was doing the most with his Kirito outfit, but I can't lie, the fit looked like fire. Once they got settled in, they started the king game. They would each draw a chopstick with a number inscribed on it, and whoever was king would get to command the other numbers to do stuff. Quite a fun game if you play it without erotic intentions. The Rizless gent started off slow and gave a bunch of funny tasks to the girls, but eventually the time came for them to act out their plan. Shunpei told Junichi that he was going to make him kiss Yukana in the next round, but Junichi didn't feel right kissing Yukana just because of a game. So he sabotaged the plan and sacrificed himself to save the girls from Shunpei's plan. By sacrificing himself, he ended up having to kiss Shunpei, and Keigo kissed Minoru. There isn't an amount of money you could pay me that would make me kiss another man. It's just not going to happen. Yukana noticed what had happened and thanked him. After the game was done, Yukana brought up vacation plans and suggested they all go on one together for summer. They were all in on it, but a lot of them didn't have any money. So Yukana suggested they get jobs together as well. That way they could save up the money and still have time to go on the vacation. They all settled on the beach as their vacation spot and began making plans. The quarter of Rizless gents were thinking about how to get money for their upcoming trip with the girls. They couldn't come up with anything, but Shunpei suddenly had an idea for how they could make some money. I can already see this ending badly. To my surprise, Shunpei actually pulled through with some solid job options. They were tailored to each guy too. He gave a job at an anime store to Keigo, a job at a kid's daycare to Minoru, and a job as a kitchen staff to Junichi. The gents were celebrating their new jobs, but Minoru was acting all sus and should be thrown in prison. Why is this guy not in prison yet? And so they started on each of their jobs. Keigo and Shunpei had it rough for a little while on their first day, but after getting used to it, Shunpei put in enough work to become Employee of the Year. He organized everything perfectly, and even made a list of manga and light novels that would potentially sell well. He was in the zone. Meanwhile, Junichi headed to his own workplace. When he got there, he found the rest of the girls working there too. Of course, they went to work at a cosplay cafe. Yui was hella embarrassed because she didn't want Junichi seeing her in cosplay, but she had no choice but to deal with it. And so, for the next few days, Junichi worked there with the girls as they gave various services to the customers. He even got some service of his own when he walked in on Yui changing. She got embarrassed and furious and slapped him across the face. No offense to Yui, but there wasn't really much to see anyway. Plus, Junichi would never intentionally do such. He's too much of a coward. Anyway, as the days went by, their vacation drew nearer, and Junichi was already getting stressed out by the workload, but things were about to take an embarrassing turn. The next day at the shop, the owner decided to have an event. He planned to have Yukana and the girls read lines from a shoujo manga to the customers. The idea was, while they read the lines out, they would turn red and shy, and the customers would go crazy for it. Not a bad plan, actually. But of course, Yui was too embarrassed to do that kind of stuff, so she went to talk to the manager about it. What a killjoy. Anyway, as soon as she left, Nene went through the books and decided to read a few lines to see what they were like. And it was definitely as naughty as you'd expect. Just reading it was enough to make Junichi's mind start going places. As soon as Ranko saw that he was blushing because of it, she got in on the fun and started reading some lines as well. But this time, she made sure to put a lot of emphasis on them to really immerse the listener. In other words, she made it sound extra naughty to turn Junichi on even more. And of course, it was working. Yukina was feeling left out. I mean, every other girl was turning her boyfriend on, of course she'd feel that way. So, she too picked up a book to read from it, but Junichi stopped her before she went too far. Not long after, the manager came in to see if they had picked a book yet, but Yui came in shortly after him with the owner on the phone, and after the manager spoke to the owner, he canceled the event and sulkily went away. When their shift was done, Junichi walked home with Yukana. They talked about how they wanted to do all sorts of things together with their friends, but Yukana came out and told Junichi that she wanted to one day go on a trip with just him, to which he cheerfully agreed. Oh, how cute. They're already planning their future together. Junichi, you might just become a man very soon after all. The fated day had finally arrived. The gents were super excited to be there, but their excitement was only just beginning. The girls started to come out one by one, as if they planned it. Nene grabbed Junichi as soon as she came out with her swimsuit. Hers looked like it was struggling to keep her milkers in place. Part of me hopes the swimsuit fails in that mission at some point. When Yukana finally came out, she looked the best. Cute, sexy, and stunning all in one. And as soon as she came out, they all set off to enjoy the beach. Junichi helped Yui set up her beach chair, but as soon as Yukana called him over, he ditched her to go meet his beautiful babe, as he should. When he met up with Yukana, he started splashing water around with them, but Nene attacked him from behind with her humongous milkers and told Junichi to also pay attention to her as well. I see why the gents hated Junichi initially. Why does he get all this service for free? I'm so pained. While they were playing around with water, Yui came along and brought an actual water gun to use and splash water around. Like, damn, why'd she choose violence? After they had played around to their heart's content, they headed back to where their stuff was. The gents were there watching it the whole time. They thought they finally had their chance to play with the girls too, but instead, the girls told them to have fun on their own. This is definitely not the dream vacation they had in mind. Things weren't looking so great for the gents, but Shunpei came prepared. He had a plan to make the most of their situation. It was at night when the girls went to the open bath that he made his move. He had brought military-grade gear to use and spy on the girls from afar, since getting close was not an option with the motel security. The girls were oblivious to this and were just enjoying themselves. They even enjoyed the view from where they were, but afterwards, Ranko went around fondling the milkers of the girls. She started with her personal favorite, Yukana, and then went to the main course, Nene. Needless to say, she completely avoided Yui and her surfboard chest, but Yukana took pity on Yui and fondled her chest too. Meanwhile, Shunpei was leading the boys to their destination, and he warned them of potential traps that the innkeeper could have set. Junichi intentionally triggered one of the traps so that they could abandon the mission and go back. But Shunpei had planned for this. He intentionally set the trap to see if Junichi would sabotage them. Okay, even though his intentions are perverted, I gotta give him credit for his planning skills. Keigo and Shunpei quickly chased Junichi away and off a cliff before continuing their mission. Crazy how these guys prioritized peeping over the life of their friend. That's some scary level of dedication, but it was all for naught, because the innkeeper had set traps of his own too, and the gents triggered enough of them to get knocked out cold. Damn, all that planning for nothing. Elsewhere, Junichi finally came to and saw Yukana. He realized he was at the beach and remembered his fall from the cliff. Yukana was just happy to see that he was okay. Junichi apologized for scaring her, but she said it was okay. After that, they talked for long about all sorts of stuff, and Junichi told her that he would like to come here again with her, but just the two of them. Yukana was so excited to hear that. She then asked Junichi what his ideal date would be. At first, he thought that he'd be okay with anything as long as it made her happy, but he finally said he would love to go to an amusement park at night with her. Yukana loved the idea. It sounded romantic. Well, Junichi, you sly dog. So, you do have some riz after all. While they kept talking, the other girls looked from afar off. Ranko was the first to notice that Yukana was having so much fun talking to Junichi. Then Nene noticed and Yui did too, but the lovebirds were too busy staring at the stars and giggling. After the trip was over, Junichi and Yukana were heading back home when out of the blue they met a handsome-looking guy. His name was Dai, and he was apparently in the same middle school as Yukana. They immediately started catching up, and Junichi felt so out of place. He just stood there and acted like he didn't exist. But once Dai asked who he was, Yukana ran back to Junichi and introduced him as her boyfriend. They greeted each other and went their separate ways. While Junichi was going back home, he felt so insecure about that whole scenario. He wondered what happened between them in the past, but Yukana snapped him out of his violent thoughts. She asked what was wrong, and he told her how he felt inferior to Dai, and for some reason, Yukana got mad at him and took off without him. What the heck? The next day at school, the Rizless gents were still reminiscing about their trip to the beach, but they noticed that Junichi was feeling down, so they asked him what was up. After Junichi explained the situation to them, Shunpei and his stupid brain concluded that Dai was basically his romantic rival, and he should avoid Yukana being near him at all costs. Junichi was regretting asking them for advice. Just then, Yukana walked in, but instead of her coming up to meet him as usual, she just ignored him and walked off. Yeah, Junichi is screwed. He kept trying to talk to her all day, and when he finally got his chance at the end of classes, she ditched him to go and hang out with some other people. Damn, that's cold. The quartet of Rizless gents ended up going to a karaoke bar to sing their troubles away. While they were there, Junichi was too depressed to do anything. But after a good punch to the face, he started acting normal again. Shunpei told him that the best thing to do in this case was to just grovel and beg Yukana so that things will be okay again, which actually works 90% of the time. But when the guys were done with karaoke, they came out to see Yukana in the shop across the street, talking to Dai and giggling. Poor Junichi. His world was crumbling all around him. The next day when he was heading to school, he started rationalizing the situation, telling himself that it was fun while it lasted at least. But now Yukana had found a popular guy she liked. And speaking of the devil, Yukana appeared. She said that she might have been a bit too harsh on him yesterday and apologized, but Junichi couldn't handle it anymore. He told her that he didn't want his emotions to be played with, and he'd rather stay a virgin all his life if that's what it meant. Yukana had this upset and sad look in her eye, but Junichi just ran off with his broken heart. When school was over, Yui asked to meet Junichi on the roof. While they were there, she asked him to talk to her if he was feeling down. Junichi told her the situation, and for some reason, Yui got upset at him too. What is wrong with the girls today? Why is everyone getting so upset at Junichi without explaining why? I'll never understand girls. Junichi headed home still sulking, and he got attacked from behind by Nine. She noticed he was in a bad mood and asked what was on his mind. As soon as he finished explaining things to her, she did the same thing the others did. She called him uncool and ran off. Later, Junichi was at home watching Yui's live stream and feeling like a horrible person for not even knowing what he did wrong. The next day, Yukana called the girls together to talk about Junichi, but before she could get a word out, tears filled her eyes. Ranko saw this and stood up to beat the stuffing out of Junichi for making her cry. When she got to the cafe that Junichi was at, she grabbed him and got ready to punch him, but he yelled at her and made a couple brazy statements that made Renko let him off the hook. But as things settled down, Yukana's friends from middle school walked in, and Dai was among them. He started talking about how he planned to use and dump Yukana, and Junichi was not about to let that slide. Junichi confronted Dai about what he said and asked him to apologize, but of course he wasn't going to. Junichi grabbed him by the collar, and things started getting rowdy, so they took it outside. Dai and his guys surrounded Junichi as he challenged Dai. Junichi threw a few blows, but Dai was clearly stronger than him. Junichi went for a last-ditch effort and grabbed his ankles, then bit it. Dai was screaming and even kicking Junichi in the face, but Junichi wasn't going to let go until he promised to stay away from Yukana. Dai tricked him and said he wouldn't, but he just kicked Junichi in the face as soon as he let go, then proceeded to beat him up. Just as things were looking bleak for Junichi, Renko and the gents came along to help him. They told Junichi to go to Yukana and let them handle Dai and his boys, and Junichi ran off. He tried calling Yukana, but she wasn't answering her phone, so he sent her a text to meet him behind the school instead and hoped she would come. Back at the parking lot, Dai's boys had been beaten by Renko and the gents. He managed to slip away thanks to the distraction from a little girl. Minoru turned into a Scion's ape form and proceeded to chase down Dai. The gents held Minoru back, but Renko grabbed him and threw him to the wall, then hit him in his family jewels. Once he was down, she told the gents to let Minoru go. Once they did, he charged at Dai with full speed and intent to kill. Meanwhile, Junichi was already at the school waiting for Yukana. He could only hope that she answered his message and came. While he waited, he thought back to how crazy the past few months were. And it was all because he started dating Yukana. Just then, she came around the corner and met him. And just like he did when they first met, he went on his knees and begged her to be his girlfriend. She asked him why he liked her, and he began to list all the things that he loved about her. Even though it was a dare at first, he had come to love Yukana a lot. And after hearing all those words of reassurance, Yukana told him to stand up, and she hugged him. Her mood suddenly brightened up, and she asked Junichi to come with her somewhere. So, after they both went home to change, they met at the train station, and Yukana was wearing the outfit that Junichi picked for her. That time, they went shopping. After they got off the train, Yukana led Junichi to an amusement park. He was so excited that she remembered. She dragged him along and they went on a ride. From scary houses to merry-go-rounds, they went on a bunch of stuff and had a laugh the whole time. When they were done, they had a little break and got drinks. But shortly after, Yukana dragged him along to somewhere else again. This time, it was a kissing booth. Junichi was thinking about whether they'd actually do it this time, but he got lost in thought and Yukana vanished from his side. She came back out to find him and took him into a booth. She told Junichi that a normal photo would be boring, so she put out her lips for a kiss. But as Junichi did the same, she took the photo and left him hanging. This girl just loves to tease Junichi. After they got out, they stared out at the water and enjoyed the view. And while his emotions were at its climax and they were both smiling, Yukana kissed him, then quickly took off. Are you serious? You finally kiss him, and you won't even let him enjoy the moment? What are we doing here? The next day, as he was heading to school, he met up with Yui and thanked her for talking sense into him. Shortly after, Yukana and the others came along. They noticed that something had happened between Yukana and Junichi, but Yukana took off with Junichi before they could drill any answers out of them. And just like that, everything ended up happily. Or did it? Let's know if you think there'd be another season of this anime, and what are we expecting to happen in it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you in the next recap.